Good morning and welcome to Angel's Table. I would like to introduce my co-host, Denise Graham, actress and writer, and Parker Matheson. He is a budding actor and a producer. And I'd like to welcome our special guest, Katelyn Maylum. She is a producer, an actor, a writer, and she is working on two projects currently. One is called Stay, and one is called How to Kill Your Exes.
A Guide to Killing
Your Exes, sorry. That's okay. Katelyn and I have worked on projects in the past. She wrote and produced a movie called People Who Hurt. It was a wonderful project. I loved being a part of it and formed a new friendship and working relationship. So today, the topic that we are going to be discussing is sex and nudity in the film industry. Now, Katelyn, the reason that this subject came to my mind to be something that I wanted to discuss is that I manage my daughter, and going through all the breakdowns, and every single day I'm going through the breakdowns and I see so much that's sex and nudity.
Right.
And for a new actor breaking into the industry, it seems increasingly frustrating, and especially as the mom of a young actor. So, and I know it's prevalent in the film industry as a whole, but I do see it a lot more in the independent film. So I know what my perspective is on this as a talent manager, agent, mother, but as a producer, what does it mean to you when you're writing a movie or when you're casting a film or producing a film? How do you feel about the necessity of sex and nudity?
Typically, I feel for independent films, because I work pretty much on only independent films that don't have a budget or a ultra low budget. I don't write nudity into my scripts, and I don't feel like it's not necessary, really. I mean, there's so many other ways to do things without revealing everything. And especially when I know that I'm not paying my talent, I don't feel it's right to ask them to take their clothes off. I've been in situations where I've said, no, there's no nudity in my film, but with People Hurt, there were scenes, we had love scenes, but it was hard to film without the person like, okay, we're the only ones that are going to see it, but I need you to take your shirt off for this scene.
Right.
Because you didn't bring a nude bra, you know? So it's like, I'm not against nudity, but I feel like if you're not getting paid, it's not really something. I, as an actress as well, have been in a situation where I've been asked to be nude or what have you, and for me it's like, well, maybe if it was like directed by Martin Scorsese and it was, you know, I'm getting paid this money and I know that it's going to be done in a tasteful way and there's a reason and a purpose behind it. But I feel like a lot of nudity now in films is just kind of like
gratuitous.
Just show it, and it's not necessary. So I don't write a whole lot of nudity in my movies. I have a lot of love scenes in my movies, but we kind of do the lead up into the love scene. We don't really show, you know, all the, you know,
falling on the pillow.
Right. I mean, it's just, you can do so much without actually showing everything.
Right. So now, you brought up Scorsese. So now, if you were on a bigger budget, if you had the money, would your thoughts about that change? Would you feel like, okay, I have the budget that I can pay the actor $800 a day or whatever it is, would you feel more inclined to write the nudity into the...
No, because I'm just not that, I don't know, my writing's not, I can't explain it. I just don't feel the need, there's not really a need for nudity, a ton of nudity. I mean, you know, I don't even think in any of my films there's been any nudity, and we've had love scenes in my movies, and they turn out well, and you don't need it.
Right.
Really.
Now, as a writer, because you are writing screenplays, correct?
Yes.
And what is your perspective on that as the writer?
I don't write it into...
You don't write it into...
But I also don't write love stories.
Okay. I
So
didn't know
that
that.
makes a big difference.
Yeah, that would make a really big difference.
But I would say that I don't think love stories would be the ones with nudity in them.
Well, they actually are the ones that they try to
Really?
throw nudity in there to, I think, to
I
get
think
that,
predominantly.
Yeah.
to get that other demographic.
Right.
You know, they even though it's a romance, for instance, somebody's more likely to go see it if they think they're going to see Halle Berry nude or something.
Right, how are you gonna get your boyfriend to see 50 Shades?
Yeah.
You know, all the sex and...
Right.
Okay.
Well, that's the whole point of that movie. So.
Is it?
No, some people read the books, I don't know. Not me, but...
I didn't read the books either, but
I did.
you did.
I didn't want to go see the movie.
Yeah.
Like, okay. Well,
How are you gonna transfer that? Yeah.
It's just
Right.
No.
Because it just turned into it turned into something. Well, I don't know how it could actually turn into something else, but it's different when it's not your imagination, it's
Yeah,
someone else's
right.
portrayal, and then it's just
Oh,
like,
yeah, I didn't think about
I don't know
that.
if I really want to look at that.
That's a good point. I hadn't thought about that.
And things that might be attractive written down can be
Right.
really creepy as a visual.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's true.
Yeah.
Because I haven't read I haven't read any of it at all, but I've heard that, like, it's an abusive relationship, and not in the way of, like, the kink, but in the way of the emotional aspect.
Absolutely.
It's really abusive.
Right.
And not in a sexual way, it's
Right.
just plain.
And it's like it's not romantic either.
Yeah.
You know, it's just someone expressing something that they needed to express.
Right.
They had a hell of
So-
a budget to do it.
Yeah.
Oh, right. So that's kind of an interesting idea, though. So, with that in mind, what then is the necessity of that? If it's not really about the sex, it's just about
Well, no, I meant the
I mean,
stuff
in
outside of the sex, but
Right.
the whole point of that movie is sex, so that's the
So,
point
okay,
to that
now
movie.
you as a young up-and-coming producer, what is your perspective on sex and nudity in the film industry?
I mean, I probably wouldn't, like, if I was writing it, I probably wouldn't write it in at all. But, I mean, I get it, because it can sell the movie,
Right.
and if you're looking at it from a purely business standpoint, makes sense. Throw some boobs in it, that'll help sell it.
Yeah.
If they're A-list boobs, even better, you know?
Yeah. So, okay.
Though actually,
now-
I'm not sure how much that necessarily would help it sell. Like, it still needs to be something people want to see, I think, because,
Well,
like, I'm thinking, like, Halle Berry had a topless scene in Swordfish, and I don't think people liked that at all, and
that's
There's-
she's your princess. You don't really want to see your idols.
also, it also
You don't
might
know
just
that
be
much about
because
them.
that was after Catwoman, I think, and
Oh.
after Catwoman, she lost all credibility.
Did she?
Oh, people, I like almost entirely, or
Oh.
like people. She just wasn't in stuff besides like X-Men after that, or at least not anything anybody watched. I don't like her.
That's
I am just saying that's what happened.
Okay, so to bring it back to the.
Sorry.
No, that's
Derailed
okay. Yeah, you did derail it a bit. That's all right. But okay, as I'm going through the breakdowns and I'm seeing what the producers are putting out there, do you think the intent is that they're going to sell it to Netflix or to something, and the distribution is going to be greater because it says, no, you don't think.
I don't think it makes a difference if you have nudity or not, because if it's a good film, it's a good film. If it's a bad film, it's a bad film, whether you got boobs in it or not, you know. So I don't think it helps it or
I think
it might even hurt it more. So.
I don't think in film it affects things really much at all. But like if you're selling it to HBO, they might be like, "But can we put nudity in it?" Because
Oh yeah, because
HBO and like Showtime and Stars, that's a whole different thing, and I think they probably try to put nudity in things.
And I think for the independent circuit, it might hurt more because in our area here, we, I don't see a lot of nudity in the independent films I see around here, and I think a lot of people aren't really into that.
Except there are two producers who shall remain nameless.
Oh, I
in
can
this
try.
area that always
And-
want their actresses to they'll describe a busty woman, something, and it's really irritating.
It is, because is there anything about this woman other than her bust that I'm a...
No, that's her character.
Yeah, that's her
That's
character.
it.
And it's almost like, it's just a...
No, you guys don't understand. That's all men want in a female character.
Yeah. It's
No, that's...
Primarily in horror films.
I know.
It's crazy though.
Yeah.
But I think that if you got good writing,
Mhm.
you don't need nudity.
Yeah.
Or if you've got a story that people really want to see and to hear, you don't need nudity.
Right.
And so I think it's just kind of a cheap way to try to get people to come in and see the
Well,
movie.
I think if the intent is that, then it is just kind of cheap. It's like, okay, whatever.
Yeah.
But I mean, like, if you have a horror movie without nudity, apparently it doesn't sell. And you can't have any college age comedy without nudity.
Because that demographic
Yeah.
wants to see
Yeah.
the boobs, the
Yeah.
butt, everything,
Yeah.
you know?
It's just no.
Right. Right.
So I mean, it depends, I guess.
Yeah.
Like,
Well,
but then there's not a whole lot of seriousness to either of those genres.
So
So
they're not based on the writing being really good.
Yeah, no,
it's
they're
just
not.
a matter of how funny is it.
Yeah.
How many
Yeah.
scenes can you make people laugh and
Yeah.
ridiculous.
well,
But I
Right.
also think I'm not as a producer, but like on the directing writing side, I'd like to have the option if I wanted to do that. Like I saw Deadpool yesterday, and did you
Sorry,
see it?
Friday.
Yeah. So and it's a comedy and it's funny. I really enjoyed it. But there's just one scene that's a completely serious scene. It has, it's he's in a fight and he was wearing a hospital gown and he just tears it off. So he's nude during that scene, and this is a completely goofy movie. But he was nude for that scene and it wasn't played for laughs at all, and it wasn't like anything that's focused on. It's just
It happened.
he was in a hospital gown. It was in the way. He took it off, and the fight scene continued that way. It's like that
Fair
makes
enough.
sense. I like that.
Exactly.
And also,
if it makes sense within
Yeah.
the framework of the story,
Yeah.
then I don't necessarily have an issue with it. Well, I don't have an issue with
yeah.
it.
yeah.
Because I remember that scene. I totally forgot about it because it just was. I remember the scene, but the nudity I didn't even pay attention to.
Yeah, well,
because it
they kind of shadowed it all, and
Mhm.
but I remember watching the scene, like looking intently. I'm like, did I see his penis there?
Right.
And like that was what I was focusing on in the scene. I'm like,
But I
is
remember
that-
having that thought as well. But again, but until you mentioned it, I had totally
Right,
forgotten about
yeah.
it. So now I need to see it again and look more closely.
Well, and I have to admit that when we were watching Boardwalk Empire and the one actor gets out to answer the phone and he's nude, I'm like,
Right.
I don't see this very often. It's usually the women.
Mhm.
And
Oh,
so,
there was a good amount of Ryan Reynolds butt in
Yeah.
Deadpool, so
yeah, that's all right.
ladies.
I think
But
there's
they were just the
But
joke, the humor. Was
Yeah,
just,
yeah.
It was so.
Yeah, I mean,
I
it-
enjoyed that movie.
Yeah, if you
I really enjoyed it.
don't like crude humor, it's probably not for you. But I mean, it's did the best out of any R-rated film ever, I think,
Wow.
in this opening week.
Well, one thing is, for me, because you're much more open-minded about everything, I've obviously become
it's
more
the
open-minded.
generation.
It is the generation.
I was gonna
yeah.
say it's because you're old, but
That's because
she had a more delicate way of saying
We're
it.
both millennials, right?
Yeah.
That's why.
You can't say you
Yeah.
cannot call your mother old because I'm older than she is.
Well, see, now I feel bad because I just
Good. Well, but I do think, from my perspective, that I don't, because I was watching an old movie and I thought, oh, I didn't realize there was this scene in here. I definitely think, because I'm the mother of an actress,
Mhm.
that it has changed my perspective on it.
For sure.
So now I look at, and she's in New York, so I'm looking at all the breakdowns for New York, and then some for LA, and when we were in LA it was the same thing. That more and more, for these low budget films, requiring nudity or
Right.
sex or simulated sex or whatever.
Yeah.
And you have these young women who are coming out to break out into the industry, and this is a requirement. So it's like it's getting narrower and narrower of what these young actresses can apply for. So, so then I look at it and think, well, is it necessary in this movie? And they'll give you the synopsis, and sometimes I think, okay, yeah, but can they get away with not doing this? And I do think, yes. And I'm not sure, and this is where, from the writer and from a producer's perspective, can it be done that you can actually start hiring these women for next to nothing for these scenes and not have them take their shirt off?
Well, when I hear you describe it like that, I don't feel like that at all, because it's like they can do it this way and they want to do it this way. Why should they try their hardest to not do it?
Yeah, I guess that makes sense.
So
and,
it's like-
I understand when
yeah.
it's your project, you want to do your project the way you want to do it.
Yeah.
And I mean, there are times when I'll see a breakdown and it's like a month later and they're still trying to get an actress when it's like, well,
Why? There's a reason.
Yeah.
there it is. You know?
But that's the thing. If people feel that they don't have to be nude, and suddenly people stop submitting for those roles, then they're going to have to take a look at
Compromise. And I think if you really want somebody in your film, you should be willing to compromise. I mean, you want, the main thing at the end of the day is that you've got talent that can carry this film and make it successful. And I don't think them showing their boobs is going to hurt it either way. So I think for those type of breakdowns where you say they keep submitting them over and over because they can't get what they want, it's like they need to look at themselves and
They
their
do.
work and decide, hey, is it worth it when I'm paying next to nothing to ask someone to take their clothes off?
Right.
But
I mean,
again,
yes.
not even the paying next to nothing. I don't think that it has to,
Right.
unless it's essential to the story.
Exactly.
I always go back to that movie Fame a long time ago, and at the end of the scene, the one that wanted to be in the movie so badly, and she took her shirt off, and I think that kind of symbolized it to me, that this is just not, it's not necessary. If you just have to pass on that one and go on to the next one.
And on the
Okay,
way, go ahead.
Actually, and that actually brought a thought up for me of something that, do you think to some extent, because girls, actors, male, female, want to get into the business, that they might compromise
Yes.
their own morals
Yes.
and do that and take the job, and then later they're
Regretting it.
regret
I was
it.
just talking to Christian on the way here about this, and there was a film that they did it was like a couple of years ago, where they were telling these actresses that they'd give them TVs if they took their shirts off, and all kinds of craziness, and they did it, and then they told them, they'd pay them and all this. They never got paid, never got their TV or whatever, and those women were very, violated. And I mean, I think it does, it's scarring,
Right,
for these
right.
women who feel like, okay, well, he said that he'll pay me and I'll get exposure and all this, and it's
You
sad.
got exposure.
Oh yeah, but it's sad.
Yeah.
It really is.
That I'm going to kind of tidy up on that one subject before we close. So the way I see that part of it is, sometimes when I'm looking at it, I think they can exploit when they want to, that they do. And, like you said, that it's their project, they should be able to do what they want with it. But to a certain extent, are they taking advantage? And also in the age of, which this is a totally other subject, but I'm just going to throw it in there for this one little breakdown, that women, they can in their mind, because we're empowered now. So are the women saying, yeah, I'm going to take this, I'm an empowered woman, I'm going to take this job, and I'm taking my clothes off, or I'm having simulated sex or whatever, and then a month down the road, and you're going, I wish I hadn't done that.
Well, I think there's a lot of differences of opinion with women there, because there's those women that are all free the nipple and like Miley Cyrus, you know, posing nude to
Right.
prove a point, and then there's, you know, women who see the nudity in everything and like why it's
Right,
or,
right.
so
And that's actually something
It's-
I
it's
would
just
love to
kind of
talk
the
about
thought
too,
about-
is that, but I think that's another segment.
yeah.
So, I really appreciate you being here and talking
no
to me
problem. I
about
enjoyed
this. I love that, I love your perspective, and I respect your perspective. I think we've had a pretty good discussion, and I'm sure that we can probably touch on this again in the future, maybe from
Definitely.
a different perspective, but thank you everybody for participating in this conversation. Thanks. Thank you everybody for coming.